Every deck building guide tells you the same thing. You need ramp, you need card draw, you need removal, you need lands, follow the template, hit your numbers, and your deck will work. And that's the whole point of my channel, creating a deep dive series mathing out all the right numbers you should have when building a strong commander deck. So, you do it, you follow the template, fill the buckets, and by the time you add all the utility cards, you look up and realize 2/3 of your deck is already spoken for. And that's the problem with template deck building. And that's why I double dip. It's like ice cream. In this video, I'm going to show you what intentional overlap actually does, give you the math for it when it's working and when it isn't, and explain why this is the difference between a deck that functions and a deck that really belongs to you. Every card in our deck plays a role. It's a draw card, it's a ramp card, it's an elf matters card, and overlap is purposely choosing cards that serve multiple roles in our deck. And while it's efficient to play cards that do many things in one piece of cardboard, it's more important to play overlapping cards to create space for more thematic deck building. As we know, Commander has been getting more and more powerful, deck builders are getting better and better, and there's just so much information to learn from. Modern deck design takes away space with all the staples and good cards that get printed with every set. Thematic building is how we inject more of our personality or our ideas into the engines that we build within our decks. I like using the 8x8 cube theory model, simple 8 card packages that we quickly use to fill and start seasoning our decks with a flavor or idea. But as we know from Commander templates, if there are only 24 slots left for thematic building, like my math-tested template recommends, that only leaves you, 8, 16, 24, 3 themes to build with, like 8 vampires, 8 +1/+1 counters, and 8 token synergies. That's barely anything at all, that's just 3 decisions. Finding synergies between your themes is another fun way to save on slots, but push a different avenue within your deck you might not have considered. For example, Yaheni Bartolome, I don't know how to pronounce this one, Cordial Vampire, Indulgent Aristocrat. All vampires, all +1/+1 counters, but also aristocrats. And if we find 4 +1/+1 counter cards that are not vampires, but are also aristocrats like Fane the Broker, Death's Presence, Venom, Eddie Brock, or Necrosynthesis, we have now developed a whole sub-theme of aristocrats while staying within our 16 slots of vampires and counters, right? 8 cards of vampires, 8 cards of counters, 4 of each together creates a new column of 8 aristocrat or sacrifice matters. Still only 16 cards. And talk about numbers, we'll get to the numbers later of how many you should actually play for what type of packages and themes, but the first thing we need to address is how to overlap themes and cards relative to the most important thing, our game plan. The thing we have to remember, as we're about to go pick cards that overlap roles, is not just flexibility, because flexibility is boundless, it's everywhere. We have to remember the game plan of our deck. Let's take Sad Robot or Solemn Simulacrum as an example. It technically hits multiple roles. It's card draw when it leaves, it's ramp when it ETBs. It's also a whole point on the unit of value we defined in our Grand Unified Theory of Value video. But do you still play Sad Robot? Probably not in a deck that doesn't care about artifact creatures, have blink effects, or recursion like Marin. I like Marin. But at the end of the day, your deck needs to have a strong proactive game plan. So you can find all the cards you want that are flexible, that hits multiple themes, that's awesome. But what's great about Necropolis Regent that hits 2 themes, vampires +1/+1 counters, is she threatens to end the game if left unanswered. And that's a card we want in our deck. This is the mid-range principle from my Mid-Rangeify video applied to overlapping thematic building. What a sentence. The best multi-role cards that have overlap aren't just sufficient, but they can also be threats or support our threats. And while it's great to squash as many of our interaction, draw, and ramp into as few spells as possible so we can have as much buttery thematic cards as we want, we have to remember that in most cases, investing mana to board is better than investing mana purely into an effect. Curving out from an Elvish Visionary into an Aether Channeler into an Acidic Slime on 5, you got 2 draws and a removal spell while also developing a board that you can blink or grow with other effects like a Cultivator of Blades. Very cool card, I like this card. It's an elf, makes artifact tokens, and also is like a budget Craterhoof. And that's what you want your thematic cards to do, not just check off as many roll boxes as you can. Your card needs to be part of a plan. But talking about checking off boxes, just want to quickly shout out my new deck building website that patrons have access to immediately. It's made with thematic deck design in mind because that's the way I naturally work. It integrates all the math and recommendations the deck building series has been developing over the last year, so not only is it easy for you to discover cards that are interesting and new synergies for your deck for creative deck building, but also gives you the tools to help refine those decks to be stronger while still being yours. And also, you can subscribe to higher patron tiers and submit your deck directly to me to personally review with a short, written recommendation. Alright, so with that said, back to the video. While we're on the subject of powerful cards, by the way, whenever we talk about Commander, we gotta talk about CDH. We know that the higher in the bracket system we go, efficiency starts to matter more and more than flavor. I mean, it is kind of flavorful to play Mox Amber and Rograk in every deck, I guess. At CDH, every slot is spoken for by efficiency. Mana cost matters more than flavor. Generically good cards replace personal ones, unless your thing is casting Underworld Breach. I mean, it could be. Power and efficiency is something we always have to remember, like a dial we need to crank up when we need to. And utility is mandatory. You need your deck to function, right? To ramp, to draw, to interact. Nobody's arguing with that. When we are purposeful with when we need to be efficient and when we need to create space for expression through overlap, that is how we turn a restrictive template system into an actual canvas that we can make decisions with and create unique decks. So finding overlap is easy. Magic basically does it for you at this point. MDFCs, cycling, adventure cards, omen cards, most things printed in the last 3 years are doing 2 jobs by default. And it's kind of great that way. Like warping in a Starfield Shepherd early in the game to find land drops, then casting it later for 5 to have a flying threat and tutor another creature now that you have all your planes. The hard part really isn't finding cards that overlap or are flexible. It's knowing what kind of overlap that actually matters. And that's what the cross of overlap is for. Da-da-da! The cross of overlap. I always think of cards in 2 different types of buckets. Thematic buckets, like creature types, effects, or flavor. Then there's our utility buckets, of ramp, draw, removal, and general interaction. If we think of thematic buckets as a horizontal, and utility buckets as a vertical, then when we start looking for cards, we can start to think about what type of overlap it brings. For example, Acidic Slime. It might slot into the ooze theme. It also counts as removal, which we would then map mentally in a vertical. Also, please don't do this in paper. That's just way too nerdy. This is just a visualization to think about it, alright? So why does this cross or overlap matter? What, you don't like crosses? And cards can have utility or hit multiple themes, so what? When we think about the type of bucket, the utilitarian vertical or the thematic horizontal, they have different statistical needs. Yup, sorry, math is back. For our vertical needs, the numbers are pretty static based on the mana value of our commander, which we covered in the last video, the Grand Unified Theory of Value. If you haven't watched it, you absolutely have to watch it. We talk about operational threshold. I'm not going to get into it here. It just helps a lot. If you only build 4 mana commanders because you love Lathril and other 4-drop commanders like that, you generally don't need to stray from the 12-12 split of ramp and draw and the 10 removal card package. These numbers are pretty fixed. For our horizontal needs, however, Lord knows we gotta be horizontal more, that's a different story. Because themes are the game plan. Utility enables our game plan, kind of like a lubricant in an engine. Calm down. Themes are the whole point of the deck. So when we think about themes, we can think about them in 3 different sizes: small, medium, or large. And thankfully, because I've done the numbers so many times at this point, we just use units of 4 between small, medium, and large. And how do we decide the shirt sizing of our themes? It comes down to how important they are to our game plan. When a theme is not as important to our game plan, 4 cards is totally fine because they shouldn't be something we need to mulligan into, and rather something we are willing to draw into. So 4 cards, totally fine. But when a theme is so integral to a deck that is the main resource, like +1/+1 counters, tokens, artifact creatures, life gain, we want to have 12. And this math is actually based on the work in my payoffs and engines video. To quickly review the math behind this, with 12 cards of your deck being inputs, you'll have a 60.7% chance of opening with 1 or more in your hand, and 20% of opening 2 or more in your hand. That's just 1 mulligan. By turn 4, with 12 inputs, you have a 77.8% chance to see at least 1 input card, and a 39.7% chance to see at least 2 inputs. And we want inputs, enablers are good. And because it's 12 cards, here we can imagine that we're probably going to hit a lot more of the verticals here because this package is going to span a little bit more of the deck. If we're reserving something like 24 purely thematic cards, that's half of your thematic package just eaten up by this one package already, right? But we can save slots that way if we use overlap. If it's either 2 extremes of something we're happy to draw into later, or something we need to mulligan into and draw multiples of, why would you ever pick 8? With an 8 card package, through a hypergeometric calculator, you have a chance of mulliganing and seeing 1 or more cards of this theme at 45.6%. And if we assume a game goes around 6 turns, you draw 1 extra on your first turn and 1 each turn, with about 14 successes keeping a 7 card hand, you have a chance of drawing 1 or more cards of this package about 66.8% of the time. So slightly more than half. I ran through the math a little fast. Let's slow down a little bit. We always have draw cards to increase the chances of what we see, but I like designing against a baseline of what if we don't. So for these kind of packages of 8 cards, I think it works to our favor because packages that use the sizing of 8, we see them often enough where it's not really rare, but it's not so often it makes our deck predictable because we're seeing it only about 66% of the time. I would use the medium size as a starting point first, then goldfishing our deck to see if it actually needs more, or if it's good enough from there, and then tune. Okay, but hold on. I know we ran through the math, I know we talked about the tactics. Before you go mega tagging all the cards, I have one last thing to say you can't click off yet. You need to avoid the counting trap. The counting trap. So you got 11 cards tagged removal. 6 of them are also doing 2 other jobs and only 3 of them are dedicated removal. You feel safe, but as reality likes to remind us, you're not. The counting trap is designing your deck in a way where it counts for everything and checks off all the boxes, but it actually traps you into thinking you have everything covered. The last guardrail that you need to apply when you're thinking about compressing an overlap is don't compress so aggressively that 1 remove spells creates 3 holes. If you're playing Scavenger Region as one of your 3 board wipes, and you cast a region as a creature because you needed a Dargon, your deck now only has 2 board wipes left. Overlap creates flexibility, yes, but too much compression can end up forcing you to make tough decisions in the game. A Toxic Deluge is always a Toxic Deluge. A Scavenger Region isn't as good as Toxic Deluge as a board wipe, and also kind of mediocre as a 4-drop in 2026 Magic design. But it's a cool dragon in a Dragon Matters deck. Flexibility, like most things you buy, always has a tax. When your 2 for 1 costs 4 as a board wipe instead of 3 in life, you're paying the premium for optionality. Sometimes worth it, but Phyrexian Mana has taught us nothing's ever free. So after this, when you go tune your deck and create space, as you should, just remember about efficiency. Sometimes we want our cards just to be really good at doing the one thing it needs to do, while leaving all the softer spots, the horizontal overlaps, to be more flexible and cover more ground. The easiest way to do this is you could boot up Google Sheets or write it down on a piece of paper or use sticky notes, I don't know. Or you could use a website like mine that naturally builds with packages in mind, letting you see all the cards easily, zoom into a single package to refine, flip on a switch and see the statistics to guided decisions. The website's almost out of beta, I know I keep saying it. I'm not like kicking the can, it actually just like is getting polished a lot and having a lot of new features. But if you want to access it today, you can subscribe to my Patreon and use it immediately. And also, as a reminder, you can submit your deck to me to review at the $15 or more tier directly through the website. It takes me about a week to get to, though. There's a lot of reviews. I'll be straight up with that, alright? But I'll get there. We might even do it together on the channel, alright? Our math tested template gives you a skeleton. Utility fills it out. But the cards that sit outside the box, the weird synergies, the pet cards, the stuff that made you want to build in the first place, that's expression. And we should never leave it sitting in a pile somewhere by your chair because your desk is already filled with cards. It's just like value. We don't want to leave it on the table. Intentional overlap is how you get these cards back in. Use the template, hit your numbers, then use every overlap decision to pull something you love back into the deck box. Because that's what 100 cards is actually for. Alright, so if you stuck all the way to the end, I know last time I said I solved the power problem. I did solve the power problem. I'm just like testing the math a lot because this one's kind of complex. But rest assured, I actually got this. I know it sounds nuts. I did it. The video after this one is going to be one of the most important deck building videos. Today we talk about overlap. Next week, we're going to talk about the most important skill, which is goldfishing. A lot of you don't like goldfishing because it doesn't simulate the thing. Well, the problem is you're doing it wrong. So I'm going to teach you how to do it. It's the best way to deck build. None of the math matters. Instead of having cards that do many things, just have many things inside your sleeve. So sometimes you're like, oh, I don't got the counter spell, force the will. And then later, they're like, oh, I don't have a counter spell, force the will again. They won't see it coming. That's Brooklyn magic. All right, I'll see y'all next week. That's a good snap. Bye.